It's 4 p.m. And that task that you decided to focus and work on in the morning, you've still not touched it. Each time you decide to start on it, what do? You go and do something else. You go and make a cup of tea. You go and get something to nibble at. You start chatting with someone. You start sending emails. You know what I'm talking about? We've all experienced it. Procrastination. Have you ever wondered why a lot of times when you make a decision to move forward with your life or with a project or with a task, something keeps stopping you? You might want to start a new business, but each time you try to do something relating to it, you stop. You want to apply for a new job. You want to update your LinkedIn profile. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. You might think that it's laziness, but I've come to tell you that in most cases, it's not. Because high performing people also suffer from procrastination. The actual reason why a lot of us procrastinate is to do with the brain. You see, when you give yourself or when you create a negative narrative around a situation, our brain, whose main function is to keep us safe, to protect us, does its job by preventing you from doing that thing that you've created a negative narrative around. Now, you might have experienced rejection. You might have experienced disappointments, trauma, failure. When you then want to do something similar to any of those things or related to any of those things, your brain stops you or tries to stop you. When I closed my first business and I started launching another one, the first one was a failure. I did it for 4 years and closed it, and the narrative around it was that it failed. So when I wanted to start a new business, it took ages. Why? Because my brain then started. I found myself putting things off. Register the business. I'll do it tomorrow. What name do you want to give the business? I'll do it tomorrow. Register a domain name. I kept putting things off. When I realized what was going on, that was when I decided, no brain, we're breaking this cycle. And that's, you can, that's the key. The important thing is that you can break this cycle of procrastination. Like I said, high performing people cannot also procrastinate. And a lot of times it's because they've wired the left part of their brain where the serotonin to excel, to want to excel, to be perfect, to be very focused on quality. When that happens, that can create procrastination because you don't want to fail, which is what happened to me. One business had failed, so the brain says, no, if you do it again, what if it fails again? What if you do it and you get it wrong? If you have a boss who constantly picks faults in what you do, you as a leader, you find that that person might start missing deadlines over and over. You keep repeating the same process. I have clients who come to me, Maureen, what do? I keep telling this person off, giving them examples of what they should do, telling them where they're going wrong, but they keep repeating the same mistake over and over. What you've in essence done, or what has happened, is that that person is now too scared to make that same mistake. So what do? they hold off from doing what they are meant to be doing. They start putting things off, and then they start missing deadlines, or they get too scared to do something different, and they're in that loop of repeating the same mistake. So the key here is to break that cycle. There are few things you can do. It's not a case of discipline or time management, because you find that people that procrastinate are perfect with time management. They manage their time effectively. It's all to do with the way they've wired their mind. It's more to do with the narrative that's been created. If, as a young person, you were constantly told things you did wrong or you were not good enough, as an adult, you find that you've become risk averse. So when it's time to take action, you find yourself resisting. You don't make, you know what you're meant to do, but you don't do it because your brain holds you back. The amygdala, the emotional part of the brain, is so powerful. And that is what activates our fear response. So you find that instead of doing what you want to do, your emotional brain holds you back, gives you all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. So the key, first and foremost, is to change the narrative over that perspective, over that situation. So, for example, you notice that you're procrastinating over something. Ask yourself the question, why am I putting it off? What's the emotion coming up for me? Is it fear? Is it worry? What am I afraid of? With a client that I coached, this happened recently. And I had to ask him, what are you afraid of in completing this form that you need to complete? He was afraid of the same process being repeated again, because he had done this type of forms before, applied for the contract that he wanted, and kept being turned down. So doing another one, the brain goes, it will be the same thing again, so you resist. Could be the same thing with, maybe you're applying for a job, same thing, and you find yourself resisting because you've been turned down before, because you've been for interviews and got rejected. So change the narrative around it. Just like I said when I was about to start a new business, I had to change the narrative that yes, in the past it did not work, but I had learned lessons from it. So this time I'm coming into this business wiser. And even if it doesn't work, at least I've tried. I have given it a go. And I'll put in my all into it. And I'll still learn from that process. The other thing you can do is break things down into small, chunky bits. So, for example, when I started my podcast and I was editing, I found it quite challenging. So I found myself procrastinating, putting it off. So it used to take me about 3 days to edit a 20-minute podcast, because I would do about 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and go and do something else. So I decided that, no, you're going to sit down, Maureen, for 15 minutes and work on that podcast. Take a 5-minute break and then come back to it. And I tell you, the first few times it was a struggle. Those 15 minutes, I actually found myself going to make a cup of coffee. I realized what I was doing, put the coffee down, put the cup down, went back and sat down. Then I found myself looking at emails, had to stop myself again from looking at emails and go, no, 15 minutes. 15 minutes became like 15 hours, literally. But I persevered. And in the persevering, what you're doing is creating a new narrative, a new neural pathway. You're creating a new wiring in the brain, because the old ones are there. So what I was doing was creating a new wiring. I was literally rewiring my brain. Now I can sit down and edit a 20-minute podcast in half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on how it went. But I can sit down and edit a podcast in one go. But that took a journey. So breaking things up into chunks really makes a huge difference. These two things, try them and beat procrastination, because you can.